Okay, we have two more sessions to go. And I've noticed that we've got Martin here. Is it Martin or yourself, earlier, that's sitting here? You are both wonderfully talented people, and it wouldn't matter as long as DB Shankar is well represented, but you're happy to be sat in that chair. Okay, Martin, why don't you come and join us? Seems you're a localish guy. Okay, so we're talking about operational delivery, and I thought this session was really important to put into the program for a mixed audience, as in mixed community audience, because when we used to work years ago with Deloitte, and it was particularly around Brazil, as a joke they knew was coming, I would stand up in front of an audience and said, "We're now moving on to the boring bit." And the point of the story was, I said that it might be boring, but obviously with Brazil at the time, and they were experts at tax and things that went with that. And I said, well, it might be boring, but if you get this wrong, it's going to kill you, you know. And so it became a fairly well-rehearsed joke line that we used to use. And that's certainly not the case here, but it is true to say that sitting behind sports events are things like insurance and logistics and critical travel. And as we know, as MEI, trying to bring our branding from UK, where we couldn't get out of UK from the lack of a number, and we then got to the border and couldn't cross the border, hence why things were being delivered that day. And guess who fixed that problem for us? Our colleagues and friends from DB Shankar. So the point of the story is, I just want to spend a little bit of time talking about the things perhaps that we take for granted, but without them, we would have a really, really big problem. The subject of insurance, I'm going to start with you, Alex, in a moment, has gone from something, oh yeah, that's what the finance department deal with. Well, for all the obvious reasons, the market is just a little more complicated now. And the requests that we receive to speak to Miller are significantly higher than they were even, I think, Alex, 18 months ago. So what I've invited the folks up here to do is, starting with Alex, is just to slow it down a bit, just talk to you for a minute, to introduce themselves, introduce what they do, and then, as always, we'll open up the conversation and take out some learning, which I hope will be of relevance to you all. For a whole variety of complicated reasons, the ATPI team, who we're meant to hear today, are not sat with me at the moment, but seeing as ATPI is one of our clients, I'm going to try and tell you the best I can about the things that I think they would want to talk about. And I've got a couple of things there that I will bring up. So you'll see me in two rows. So Alex, without further ado, let's talk about Miller. You personally, tell us about you, just to embarrass you. And then tell us about Miller, then tell us, give us a bit of an overview of why we should be talking about insurance.
Thanks, Dennis, and good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Alex Mendes. I'm a risk advisor from Miller Insurance Services. So we are a London-based specialist and independently owned insurance brokerage. As a brokerage, we will advise rights holders, host cities, local organising committees, individual athletes on and broadcasters, sponsors, really any stakeholder in and around the sports and entertainment ecosystem around their risks. And fundamentally, our role then is to try and transfer some of that risk from that individual or organisation off the balance sheet and pass that risk on to lovely, big, ugly organisations known as insurers, who will invest that cash and pay out a proportion of that cash in claims when incidents happen. My background, I've worked for over a decade with Zurich Insurance, just a few hours up the road, mainly in the UK, but across virtually every class of business. That's life and general, personal and commercial. So I've seen a wide variety of risks, and as a result, sort of fairly well placed then to help navigate through that sport and entertainment ecosystem, from the individual athlete and their specific risks all the way up to what an international federation may need. That's probably all I'd say as an intro.
No,
that's all right.
That's lovely. And Annie, from a logistics perspective?
Should be on, yes. Yeah, my name is Anja Schweikert from DB Schenker. My background is actually in the freight forwarding and logistics industry since more than 30 years. In 2000, I joined the section of sports and event logistics in DB Schenker. And yeah, we have a very challenging operational environment at the moment. The whole logistics industry has, and that includes, of course, also events. So about DB Schenker, the company is actually celebrating 150 years elevating lives this year and resilience. And we have, at the moment today, a large network of around 2,000 offices around the world. So it's quite a global player in the market. We hold top positions in land, air, ocean, and contract logistics. And Martin and myself, we focus on event logistics. This division has been established also 30 years ago. And we have been in official or non-official roles in many major events in the past 20 years. And what we see in logistics is that it is an enabler of all the processes, is cross-functional, and it helps to organize your processes, it helps to reduce costs. And all hosts, all IFs, or all stakeholders basically should think about logistics at the very beginning. Otherwise, you cannot implement this centralized unit that is crossing over all the functional areas. You cannot implement it anymore at a late stage. And that's what we see today. And that's also one of the key findings that we can address here today, that everything should be planned in time. And of course, in the recent past, with the Russian-Ukrainian war, and also still the aftermath of the pandemic, which is still not over, we can see that organizing transports, even a simple transport, is much more challenging than in the past. We still have a huge backlog in some countries, even it's smoothing up a bit, yeah, but we are still lacking equipment that has a global impact. We are missing 150,000 drivers alone in Europe. And the reliability on schedule at the moment on ocean freight is just at 35%, for example. And we are missing overall 20% of capacity. And that leads into situations that can be critical for events, because there is sometimes no plan B. And if we can consult you and advise you, we encourage you to think really in time about the logistics and develop a contingency solution.
Yeah, I'd like to come back to that later on if you want to. Martin, just perhaps drop it down a level in the sense of your role being more localized. I think it'd be worth telling people, certainly for the feds, about that support.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, my name is Martin Ritter, working together with Anja, with DB Schenker, the sport events team. I'm heading the Swiss division of it. I had the chance to work inside of some local organizing committee like Lausanne 2020 or even for the Lucerne Winter Universiade, and just want to highlight again how important the logistics topic is for all involved parties. It's from suppliers as well as for organizing committees or even federations, as consider it as part of the risk management. So logistics, it's not only just doing some shipments from A to B, it's even more the part of the consulting and of the planning, which it's very time intense, but can save you a lot of costs and headache end of the day.
Thanks, Martin. And I'll just put my sort of ATPI sort of hat on for a moment. ATPI are pre-pandemic was sort of close to $2 billion turnover company. They have several divisions, one of which is in sport. That headquarters is in Amsterdam. The CEO, as it happens, is based in UK. And they will literally pick you up, move you to the right destination, whether individually or in groups, and do an end-to-end service that could include anything from a car to a helicopter to whatever it takes to get you to the right end. It was fairly obvious to them then that sponsorship activation could be something that they could help with as well. And that includes providing even event support staff. And you saw yesterday when we did the signing ceremony with FIM that we were all in Monaco with them, pre-Christmas. And, we realized yet again, when you got 50 world champions, one of which, former Jason, come on, I'm going to embarrass you. Put your hand up, Jason. Where is he? There he is, very modest. Jason is many times world champion at Speedway. He's always very modest. Yeah, I think you're getting a clap there, Jason. But when you've got 50 world champs in town and you've got the hierarchy of the federation and the rest of it, I think the message, whether it be insurance, logistics or travel, the detail does matter. And I think that, as I said, the ATPI team, and you can have a chat with Jason later on, have your picture taken. They're here to try and help you solve your physical movement, and whether it be in groups, teams, or whatever. I just want to add a footnote to that because it couldn't be covered yesterday about because Anya, I would like to come back to this conversation later on, talking about sustainability. But I often say, isn't it kind of strange that you've got a logistics company called DB Schenker who have a major sustainability initiative, and you have a travel, if I can use that term, a travel company that have a huge sustainability project that is world leading. So if you look at ATPI Halo or Halo.ATPI, this is not plant a tree for every kilometre. It is very, very sophisticated. So that's me with just covering off a little bit of ATPI. You mentioned money. And Alex, I want to come to you on the subject of money, actually, that I made that throwaway comment that, where's the insurance policy held? Oh, that's with, finance or whatever. I think you are able to look at risk and cover and check that it is as comprehensive, if that's the right word, as the people think it is, and also whether it's value for money. Would you like to talk about how that is done?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the challenges with insurance is it's sat on a budget line item year on year, because insurance is normally one of two things. It's either a statutory requirement or it's a contractual liability, which means it's in effect you're forced to take out insurance, which means lower engagement, and it's politely put a nuisance. So as long as the cost year on year can be managed, normally a finance division, to an extent a legal division, an operations division of an organisation is fairly happy to just leave it there. One of the issues we've seen is, not that we've seen, but just generally speaking, is that, and Anya mentioned capacity earlier, is that the big issue of insurance markets is that as insurers sort of rise and fall financially, and they're at the same under the same influences as banks are, they're a regulated financial business or industry, they tend to just get caught up in a lot of the economic factors that we see out there. So, societal issues, economic issues are all impacting insurers' own profitability. And as a result, they take very clear actions. Number one, they will drive extra premium from you all as policyholders, and we'll experience that as individuals and as commercial buyers. But two, they'll also try and protect themselves against future claims, which means they will offer you less cover as a result. So I guess the key message is that it's dangerous to just leave insurance as that line item spend and just allow a policy to evolve naturally, because what you need to do is be fully aware and fully conversant in what's going on out in the big wide world, and how we are all trying to modernize our businesses, that we are exposing ourselves to new risks, or the risks that we are trying to protect are changing, and so the policies that exist are maybe not functional anymore. So it's something any insurance advisor should be doing with their current clients as well as new clients, is challenging what they've got and why. And we would advocate that sort of having the right person internally to be on top of that, rather than leave policies on the shelf for a year and come back a year later and say, are they still right?
And I think you would be, without putting you on the spot, and I think you'd be happy enough to speak to a federation or another organisation and say, look, we're happy to give you an independent view of what you've got. So I think that's quite important. That sort of audit is overly strictly termed, but it's essentially a look over the garden fence and a just check. I think you'd be happy to do that.
Absolutely, look, and that is an advisor's job. You don't charge a fee for that. Ultimately, the revenue that we generate as a business comes through placing policies. So we're there to be consulted, and we're there to give you an opinion. In the last 36 hours we've been in this environment, we've been talking about some of the liability to leaders of federations around their own personal liability if they were sued for mismanagement. That's evolved erratically in the last few years and ballooned in cost. Cyber liability, just your sort of supplier network and your we talked about data earlier and all the exposure you're creating for yourself there through various systems integrations and APIing in and out of partner businesses. We talked about abuse, which is obviously a very, very tough subject to discuss, but the exposure, less of international federations, more of national governing bodies, but again, just how that's evolved because of media issues, Netflix documentaries, whatever it be, that's just driven out that risk now. And ultimately people being underinsured, and as boring as it can sound, and again, probably less for federations, but I think if large, football clubs, whatever it be, that that their stadia value has chopped and changed again, and they're still basing their insurance premiums off the value of their stadium from 10, 15 years ago, and so just constantly staying on top of those things is critical.
Okay, that's good, great insights. And I want to keep on the subject of money. Because when you mentioned about this undercapacity in the market, the delays, etc., I think I don't know whether it's settled down now, but a couple of months ago you told me about the escalating costs of moving things. So could we have a quick update on what is happening about, if it's called price certainty, and also how do you communicate that to a client if these costs have significantly jumped, let alone the delays that you talked about. So where are we now with cost?
Yeah, the market remains very volatile, and what we see, of course, the big impact is on the fuel. So certainly oil prices have at the moment a major impact on any transport, and those costs are directly they're isolated on the price. They are described as fuel or fuel surcharges on the different transport modes. But the lack of the capacity is also driving the prices. And in some aspects, fuel increase is beyond our influence, right? But what we can do to mitigate the price increase is that we, for example, in air freight, we run our own charters, so that we are not depending only on the line carriers, and we are looking into alternative transport modes to reduce costs. For example, if we have more time to move equipment, we can look into multimodal transports, so combining air and ocean, for example, to cut down costs here. With large industry customers, of course, it's easier to make long-term contracts. In the events, it's difficult, of course, because the big volumes are moved in the industry, automotive, electronicals, consumers, and so on, and on the longer term. And they have also a better planning on their volumes that they move every week. So that's happening on the key account management side. Yeah, so on the event side, I think time is king here. If we know where equipment has to be shipped, or where procurement and supply chain, how does it look like? We can analyze processes. Then we can develop a better end-to-end conception. And I think it's not only the main carriage price that is important for your financial budget. It's the complete supply chain that we have to have a look into. And I'm sure there are savings that we can still generate here. The learnings of that plus 20 years of experience is that if we could have designed the process better, we would have saved a lot of money. And that is something independent from any market situation, any air, ocean, land freight. Yeah. So I think the emphasis should be to have a more holistic view, to look into end-to-end conception, including IT system that is enhancing the transparency and bringing a better quality into the processes, including a warehouse solution instead of maybe outsourcing that, because there is always then a link to another third party, and have a unified venue logistics setup. So that is also mitigating the risks and the liability that the hosts have, and to have more services from one source. I think that is the first step into the right direction. And pure transport is rarely increasing the prices so much. What we see now, I think, is historical. It has never been. I have never experienced that in all these decades. It's really historical, like prices are 10 times higher as they were post-pandemic, before pandemic.
I mean, that
It's
really
exploding,
is
yes. And that has to do, as you see in the news, that there are 200 ships queuing up in Chinese ports, for example. Of course, that has an impact on empty equipment, which is not available. So the handling times in the ports are increasing, and each day cost demurrage, detention fee. It's not only transport, yeah. So the following costs are also to take into consideration. And I think it's easing up already a little bit, and we can just hope that it is not continuing that way, and that the war also ends soon, that we have a normality and a basis for calculation of events with all the logistics involved.
Well, no, thank you for that. And Martin, as a, you know, all the people here are client facing, but you're very close to client. When you walk in and say, sorry, the price has gone up exponentially, are people relatively understanding, or is there a bit of skepticism in the reaction occasionally?
Yeah, it's 50-50. Yeah. It's, no, but the reason why prices are increasing are very it's on the hand, and we can show them. It's we can explain with the port closures in China, for example, same situation in the US, but also due to the war situation, there are more than 100,000 drivers missing because there are Ukraine soldiers now, so they are not driving anymore. The airspace in Russia is closed for airplanes, so it means transport planes need to go vice versa if you go to China with the plane. So you need much more time, it costs a lot more, fuel prices are even going higher. So this, we try to explain the situation with these words. In addition, there are some indexes for sea freight, example, Shanghai Container Index, for example. Then we can really show and prove that it's not only an idea from logistics providers, you know. Yeah, so we really try to explain when we're facing customers and try to explain the situation, how it is. And unfortunately, yeah, these are costs that we have to bill towards the end consumer end of the day.
Got it. And I'd like to therefore check the implications for new models. But I think just to check, looking out to the audience, is there anybody out there that would like to either ask a question or comment on what's been said, or have their own experiences like to share? I'm just going to check in occasionally. You'll have to wave at me if that's the case, but have a think about it. We don't. Yep, there's a question at the front. Are we able to pass a mic, or we'll steal one of ours from here? Okay, great. So comments are welcome, because I think what you're hearing is we're dealing with an unparalleled situation, and Alex is now joining the audience. Yes, questions are welcome.
Yeah, hi, thank you. Johnny from World Table Tennis. Actually, Alex is staying here because one of the questions was for him. It was a quick question, Alex, on insurance now with force majeure and all this. Now, are you now seeing implications for pandemics and global impacts like that, and what's that doing for premiums? And then I guess for the folks just wondering, when things get better, let's be positive, will the costs come down quickly, do you think, for shipping and everything, or do you think there will be a longer delay before those are realised? So I guess maybe Alex first.
Yeah, there you go. Alex, you can come back. We're keeping
I'll
him
run
busy.
and come back. This is being screened as well, isn't it?
Yes,
Sorry,
it
so I
is.
just
Yeah.
walked off.
That's why you need to be sat down.
So look, I think actually probably less because of force majeure, but just in general, the impact of the pandemic has been more around, it's challenged coverage. So the byproduct of that is there's a lot of claims that have ended up in high courts and the like to I guess ultimately challenge class actions, right? And look at particularly I think of one insurer who got really called out actually in the hospitality sector because they were denying every business interruption claim. The product is ultimately there for let's say it's a local cafe burns down, there is a lost earning as a result of that cafe not being able to function. How do you define pandemic in that situation? So there's a whole myriad of issues that are too specific to each and every one of your organizations for me to talk across every product now. I'd probably focus more on the economic impact of the pandemic, which is then driving and spiraling a number of issues for everyone. And listening to Martin and Anya here, you know, I can make so many links to that. Ultimately, the cost is driven by the insurer's potential claims payout. And so if I keep this simple around a building, if a building is going to cost more to rebuild because of the cost of materials, the lead times, the challenges, etc., if you are insuring it at a value of even probably 2 years ago, you're probably underinsured now. And again, I appreciate property insurance is probably not for a lot of people in the room the key area to focus on here, but there are many sort of tangential links for all insurances. And by and large, every insurance policy or class of business has gone up in cost over the last between 24 and 36 months for a range of issues that were just in the insurance market. The pandemic has just given it perfect storm territory. The only area that probably didn't jump in cost was terrorism. And as a result of what's happened in the last 101 days now, that has now just started to rocket as well. So, you know, from our side, what it is giving us an opportunity, what it's giving our clients an opportunity to do, and hopefully all of you, is as and where you can find that magic bit of time, challenge what you're buying, why you're buying it, and what it's giving you. And that's what people like us should be here for, is to be that critical friend and provide some guidance, really.
Yeah, okay, and so price is coming down presumably the following day after a reduction. What is going to be the reaction time in the market? Is it a slow?
You have a glass bowl. No, Martin, you
What do you
wanted to
think,
say
Martin?
something.
Yeah, because I just had a talk about this a few days ago. It also depends on what type of transport mode we're talking about. So in land freight, it's let's say a couple of weeks, and then it will go, let's say, back to normal. But if you talk about sea or air freight, the carriers, they will try to keep the cost high, even there is already lowering. So it's a kind of a bullwhip effect.
Right, I've got one supplementary question to ask you, but meanwhile, because time is against us now, I'm going to ask you as I go down the line one final thought, because our time is vanishing in front of us. So just think, if you wouldn't mind, brief comment you'd like to make to sign off. Given that there's long lead times in the events industry, this might be a stupid question, but if something costs this today, and that's what you have to price for, and you don't know what that drop-off is, but back to the very relevant question, just for the heck of it, in 9 months' time from now, it is significantly lower. Would you be able to write contracts to say that is the price? But actually, if when your event happens in 9 months from now, if it is there, that will be adjusted. I'm not sure it's a very intelligent question, but
yeah, let's say in our case, if we, let's say, sign a contract or an agreement on it, and the prices are on this level, and it goes down when we execute the transportation, of course, we will be transparent, because transparency is one of our, let's say, key pillars, and also lower down, because otherwise it would be a kind of a rip-off. Yeah. But if the shipping takes place and we, let's say, must pay or book the shipment at a certain point,
price,
and the event takes place 9 months later, we still have the costs on the high level on the point we place the booking.
Okay, so the answer is, in simple terms, you know, there would be a way of managing that downward, which is
Yeah,
what the question was
it really depends strongly on the trade lane. Yeah, where we have that exceptional situation, it's well, nobody wants to fix something on the longer term because it's not possible. But we have also contracts. We are a global player. It's not on all trade lanes. Yeah, this situation, so we can provide some reliability and calculation security for a certain period. That's absolutely possible. It's also not the case that it's on every trade lane happening. Yes, there are some areas where the prices are the same, and we see the situation in Europe with the trucking rates they're getting better because the COVID measures are, in Europe at least, they are slowing down. Yeah, different to China where we still have that awful situation. But still, we think that we have to look into each request and provide a dedicated solution, also outlining the risks. Very clear on the conditions, because what we see sometimes in the sales process, apples and pears are compared, as we say, and in some offers there are no conditions on the price, and if you go and calculate with the price and there is no time frame given for that price guarantee, you may fail. So the message is to be very clear, not only on the price itself, but also on the conditions, on excludings and includings. Yeah, if the situation is getting smoother, we will have, for example, no more demurrage or detention fees that can, in some cases, exceed even the transport price nowadays. Yeah, so that will then lead into a reduction of the overall cost sooner or later.
Thank you. You both couldn't be clear on that point. Right, Alex, so here's some numbers for you. There are 60 international federations that have taken part in this summit. I've just checked these numbers earlier on. With 95 people involved from those federations, we have 25 cities actively engaged. And actually, there was a long list of the countries that have registered, you know, via this here and on the platform. And I didn't count those, but it looked about 50 or 60. So what final message, given that this is going to be captured, available on the portal for a week after this, what enduring message would you like to leave people, or something to think about as we sign off? And we'll have to be, I'm afraid, relatively brief.
Sure, thanks, Dennis. So I'd say it's a behavioural thought. Ask what if and keep asking what if. One of the things I've, I guess, validated in my time here in the last 36 hours and general client conversations is a lot of the bodies in this room are exceptional at finding ways to outsource and work with partnerships, work with supply chains. And from what we always see is that the first step of that de-risking happens. Push the responsibility on the contracting partner. But what happens if some of those worst case scenarios do happen? They still ultimately come back to you. And you need to think about that next wave of what if, and then that next wave of what if. And we don't have inordinate amounts of time, but it's around thinking what are those big exposures and how do we tackle them?
Great, very helpful. Anna, final thought?
I would say implement a central operation desk in your organization, in an LOC, for example. Let this person or liaison manager liaise with all your functional areas. He will discover logistics in each of your areas, and let them collect this information and then go on the market. And we encourage you to contact us anytime. Yeah, that's the key. That's the key message, I would say. Yeah, and I think that would be already mean a major change for many events.
And I think, wearing my ATPI hat, I think their message would be travel is even more complicated than it ever was before. with things changing around you all the time. And it's probably the same message: consult with the people that know what they're talking about, and it'll make it a little bit less risky. So, Martin, your final sign-off comment?
Yeah, just see logistics in a holistic view and consider also customs clearance as part of it, because customs clearance is directly linked to duties and taxes, which can be a huge amount. Yeah, you can do real saving as indeed.
Great. And I can see from the engagement from yours, thank you very much indeed, as I positioned it as being something you don't always think about, but I hope we've made the point as a team, thank you very much indeed, that this really does matter. Thank you.